when I was up in Panama City, I saw a lot of houses that were a Dutch hip in the front and a hip in the back. Well, there is no roof in Xactimate where you can do that as one roof. So what you do is you create it into two roofs and you put them together. I'll show you how to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit my F key. And if you want to follow along here, this is a good exercise for you. So we had a Dutch hip in the front and a hip in the back. So I'm going to hit the F key. And I'm going to go to my, I started to rotate it, which I probably need to do. I'm going to hit the tab key till I get to my Dutch hip. There's partial hip. There's my Dutch hip right there. So I'm going to go ahead and put it down because it's hard to tell which way is the Dutch. And I can see that I need to rotate it. So I'm going to rotate it like that. And now when I go into my properties, you'll notice I can change one end, but when you change one end, it changes it to a gable. It won't let me put a hip in the back here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it to leave the Dutch hip in the front on the D side. You can see it says D right there. So instead of saying give me a Dutch hip on both ends, I'm going to say just give me a Dutch hip on the D end only. And you'll notice how it doesn't let me change the back to a hip. So I've got a Dutch hip with a gable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put out another roof there. I'm going to go to a hip. I'm going to put it down. And remember, you always want to create your hip roofs with the ridge running from left to right so that you don't get that error message. We went over that in one of my previous videos in the level 2. So we're going to pull this right just so that our ridge runs horizontally. And then we're going to, again, change one side to a gable. So we're going to double click here. And we're going to say, just leave my, let's say the D end as a hip. There we go. And now we've got our hip in the back. And now we can combine the two. So I'm going to click this and make it a little shorter so it fits on the screen there. I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to go counterclockwise. So I'm going to hit my Shift Tab. And then I'm going to put them together. And this is a place where you could use that snap line we learned how to use a little while ago. If you hit the S key for our snap line and you zoom in and you put that both snap lines right there, see how it snapped right to that corner? Now when I grab this one, it's going to snap right there horizontally and vertically, right there to make one roof. Then I'm going to click on the snap line. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to click here. I'm going to get rid of my two overhangs because not that it really affects anything. You could leave them that way, but looks nicer if the overhangs are gone. And now you take and make one room a subgroup of the other. So I'm going to hit my Control-Shift-C and my shortcut for making a subgroup. And notice it made the back a subgroup here. So now I can double click on there and say hide that label. Click out of it. Probably want to move my label there, center it a little bit. So I'm going to hover my mouse over the diamond, hit the space bar. Once it turns green, I can move it to where I like. And now I've got a roof, two roofs that I turned into one because it's what I needed. And I've got my Dutch hip in the front and my hip in the back. So if you can't come up with something that you need that Xactimate won't do, see if it can be broken up into parts. And then just put the parts together. Now, someone in the comments down below mentioned that they can see the line of the edges of the roofs. He wrote, I've done this, but when I print it, it shows the edges of the two roofs in the sketch report where it does not show in the Sketcher in 3D. I assume he's talking about this line right here, which you can see in the report. You don't really see it in 3D because it's basically one roof. Now, if you've drawn it this way, even though you see that line in the report, your calculations here are correct. So that shouldn't matter, but I want to show you what he's talking about and why it's doing it. If I go to the report, I assume he's talking about this line right here. And that's the edges of the two roofs. And I don't think there's any way to avoid that, but the roof is accurate the quantities are accurate. And I'm going to show you why that line's there. And that line really is always there. It's always showing the back of the roof. The reason you don't notice it in other drawings is, well, I'm going to show you instead of tell you. When you draw a roof, and I'm just going to take another roof here. I want to delete this one. And I'm just going to draw a simple gable roof here. And I'm going to put an overbuild right here in the middle. So I'm going to break it. I'm going to click and drag. And I'm going to create an overbuild there. And I want you to notice where the roof is starting. The new overbuild starts up at the ridge. So when I let go, the roof really started right up here. And the reason you don't see that faint line is because it's hidden up under that ridge. And just to prove that, I'll show you, when I click on the roof, notice 3 of the 4 handles are not even inside that little roof. There's one, there's one, there's one, and here's one. And that's because this roof actually does go all the way to the ridge there. And just pretend like this part of that little roof is hidden up under this one. But watch, if I take that top handle and I pull it down, notice the size of the overbuild doesn't change. But now there's a line here that you're not going to see here on this drawing, but you're going to see it on the report. And if I go to the report and I scroll down to the sketch, you see the faint line right there? Normally you don't see that faint line because it's hidden up under this one. So you're always going to see the back of wherever that the overbuild is, or another roof. So hopefully that explains what he was asking about. Now there is another way to draw this roof, and I'll show you how to do that, but you're still going to get the same effect. I'm going to erase this roof here, and I'm going to draw that other roof that we were talking about. So what you do is you just draw a hip roof. And you always want the hip with the ridge running left to right so you don't get that error message. So I'm going to click on it and I'm going to rotate it. And then I'm going to open up the properties just like I did before. And I want to tell it just to make the hip on the C end. I'm going to get rid of the overhang down here. And then I'm going to break this. Now I want you to be careful because whenever you create, like for example, when I was creating this separately, and I'll do that here. I'll show you real quick. When I created it separately, I created a Dutch hip, and then I rotated it. And then I said it just make it the D end only. Let me move this over so you can see it a little bit better. So this is, and then I just connected these two. Now there is another way to do that, but you kind of have to be careful because once you create the roof, your Dutch hip, if you look here in the properties, this Dutch gable height does not change. So right now this one's at 1 foot. So let's say that I come over here and I break this anywhere, and then I hold down my control key and I pull that down and I create another roof right off of there. And I want to change that roof to a Dutch hip. This is another way where you don't have to add on a roof. I'm going to change it to Dutch hip. But notice my gable height is 9 inches. And now when I expand it so that it's the same size as the other one, let's take a look at that Dutch hip. It stayed 9 inches. And you'll notice that there's a difference in the way they look. See how much smaller this looks than this looks? So regardless of which way you draw it, you need to know that the dimension so that you can put it in and accurately draw it. So you need to know this Dutch gable height right here. And that way, whichever way you draw it, it'll be accurate. But that's a different way of drawing it. The end result is the same because notice this one, I created it instead of adding 2 roofs. Notice here as I hover over it, you're seeing basically the backs of the roofs. So if I want to get rid of that, I could just bring this up to where the other one is. You still see that line there. There we go. The lines in now the two are together, and you don't see them in 3D just like the other way, but you're still going to see it in your report. See it right there? And that's because it's always going to show you the back of the roof. It's just that gentleman probably didn't notice it because it's usually hidden up under the ridge. Anyway, hopefully that clears that up. And we'll see you at the next video. I added this on just to answer his question because I wasn't sure I could. I'm going to try to answer him down below. But this way he's got a visual of the explanation. Anyway, hopefully that'll take care of you, and we'll see you at the next video.